Hello everyone, it's Kateřina Peková, Tech Community Manager at STRV again. Welcome here to our 12th online event in these quite strange times. I'm really happy that I can see such a great show up here, and I hope that we will go through without any major technical issues and you will all enjoy this event. Firstly, I would like to establish just some really basic rules, how you can interact with the speakers or another attendees, so your experience is as lifelike as possible. So firstly, you have an option to raise your hand. This will be our priority. So every time anyone will raise their hand, we will step up, unmute you, and you can ask the speaker your question directly. So don't hesitate to use this option. Also, you can ask your question in Q&A session, which we will get to after each of the talks. And then last but not least, you have a possibility to chat with the others in chat. Just so you know, there's an option to write to all panelists, but also to all panelists and attendees. So always make sure that you are writing to the right person. Okay, so that's basically it. Now I want to just introduce our speakers, Filip Haskovec and Gleb Arkhipov, iOS engineers at STRV, and along with them, iOS team lead, Jan Pacek, who I'm giving word right now. So thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy, and yeah, enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Katka, for the introduction. Again, my name is Honza. I lead the iOS team at STRV, and it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers today, Filip and Gleb. Filip is an iOS developer with experience from automotive projects, and he's interested in security. So that's why today he's going to speak about security improvements in iOS and authentication. He will share some cool techniques that you can start using today to improve the security and user experience of your apps. And after Filip's presentation, we'll have Gleb, one of our developers with experience from leading many large projects at STRV. He'll be talking about the coordinator pattern, how it can help you give your app more structure, improve reusability, and he'll show us some concrete implementation examples. And we are using this approach on many of our projects, so this will be really a practical talk. If you have any questions during the talk, you can use the chat or Q&A or use the raise your hand feature. And our speakers will gladly answer your questions. Okay, I guess we can get to it. Filip, it's yours.
Hello everyone. My name is Filip, and today I'd like to show how few steps or technique you can use in your app to secure your account. First, let's talk about authentication flows. There are a few of them that are used today, and they are heavily used. First of them, there is a custom login UI. Basically, that's the implementation we all do and we all use, where we prompt user to enter their username and password, and after that we sign them in. Another authentication flow, there's an OAuth 2. It's really heavily used authentication flow, for example, by Facebook, Google, and in this authentication flow, you can always notice that you are redirected to Safari or other web interface, where you are guided through the authentication and then returned back to your app. There are third-party implementation of this flow, as I said, used by Facebook or Google, And since iOS 13, Apple introduced Authentication Services, where we can implement this flow ourselves really easily. In iOS 13, Apple came with the sign-in with Apple. This is a great approach to allow our users to use their Apple ID to sign into our application with really low maintenance and low effort. And last but not least, there is a single sign-on heavily used in enterprise environments. Used in enterprise environments, and the same thing as with OAuth 2. Apple provided us with tools to implement this authentication flow directly in our app on our own. Now it's time for our first poll. Katka, please. I would like to ask you, what authentication flows are you currently using in your app? As I can see, a lot of you is using custom login UI, and there's a lot of you that's using OAuth 2 as well and sign in with Apple. I actually forgot to mention, sign in with Apple is required to implement it if we are using any social networks to sign in our app. As I can see, custom login UI has the most votes, but it's nice to see that a lot of you is using other authentication flows, not just custom implementation of login. Let's move on to implementing authentication flows and its pros and cons. As you can see, there's a lot of pros and some cons of you implementing the flows on your own, such as OAuth or single sign-on. First, you have full control over the flow because you are implementing it, and you have control over it. Major pro, you don't need to have any third-party dependencies. This comes with a lot of issues. For example, there is sharing of your sandbox with any added dependency. Because if you have dependencies, you have to share everything, permissions, sandbox, and everything. Another pro of implementing authentication flow on your own is there is no need to support custom URL scheme since everything's happening in your app. User is not leaving it and not returning back. One of the major ones is privacy. As I mentioned, when you are having dependencies in your app, you are sharing all the permissions, files, and possibly unsecure access methods and classes. Next, let's talk about stability. You may have noticed that this year there were 2 instances of Facebook SDK crashing all the apps that are implementing their sign-in flow, and it was really issue of their SDK implementation, not of the flow itself. And Finally, there is a big pro. It's build time. Have large you want and or need your app to be built as soon as possible, so you can debug it and continue your development. As I mentioned, there are some cons to implementing authentication on your own. First, it costs some effort on your part. You have to implement it and take care of it, take care of the implementation. Another one, there is no native access to third-party flows. So, for example, with the Facebook SDK implementation, once your user has Facebook installed on their phone, if you are using their Flow, their SDK, they are automatically redirected to their native app and signed in there. Now let's talk about OAuth 2.0 because it's the most commonly used authentication flow for third-party services. As I already mentioned, it's used by Facebook or Google, and you have to provide some information in order for it to work. First, authentication URL. It's an endpoint of your authentication provider to begin the authentication flow. Next, you have to provide client ID and secret to easily to identify your app and to make sure that no one else is hijacking your authentication. Next thing you have to provide is redirect URI. This is what will be coming back to your app, and where you from that you can also get authentication token. And next you have to provide list of scopes. That's a list of intended uses for your app. So, for example, if you want to access profile info or some links, generated links, or anything else, you have to tell your authentication flow that you intend to use it. For our implementation in the app with Authentication Services, we can use AS Web Authentication Session, and this provides us with a really simple implementation where we just have to initialize it and start it, and after user is successfully signed in, we are provided with a token in callback closure. Now
Filip,
let's talk
I'm
about.
so sorry to interrupt you. Unfortunately, the internet connection is a bit lacking. Can I ask you to turn off your camera, please? Unfortunately, we will not be able to see you, but I think it's worth it.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Let me just do it. Stop video. All right. I hope it's better. Now let's talk about the single sign-on. As I already mentioned, is widely used in the enterprise environment, and the main benefits of using this approach is that it provides the enterprise or the company with one environment to use single credentials and shared access to different services with just one account and ensuring greater security to any resources that require it. For example, this approach is used by large enterprises for controlling access to different resources. and it can also be turned on GitHub, so it can be enforced that anyone who wants to or needs to have access to your to the repository under your account, they need to use single sign-on, and they need to use your authentication flow. Now I believe it's time for another poll. All right. I would like to ask you if you are using any third-party SDKs for an authentication. Please cast your votes. They are slowly coming in. As I can see, Facebook SDK is winning. Or actually it's now tied with Google. And as I can see, some of you is using other third-party SDK. Can I ask you to raise your hand if you are willing to share what SDK are you using?
Doesn't seem like anyone wants to share, so unfortunately.
All right, no problem. Now, let's move to Authentication Services. This framework was provided to us, was introduced by Apple in iOS 12, where it was mainly used or intended for providing automatic password fill-in and access to credentials in iCloud by our apps. In this framework, Apple implemented different authentication flows, so it can be easily used, as I already mentioned with the AS Web authentication session. It greatly improves security and user experience, as it's native implementation by Apple, provided to us by Apple, and it provides us with tools so we can better manage passwords and their protection through iCloud Keychain. Now, how you can leverage this authentication session framework is by creating Authentication Extension on your app to allow users to request password change, or to elevate their password-based credentials to sign in with Apple from within your app, or in a settings in passwords. We have been provided by great tool for security recommendations. You can find it in iOS settings in passwords. As you can see, my passwords are not really secure since I have 68 warnings. But what it does is it displays if your passwords are weak, or if your passwords have been leaked in any of the leaks on internet. And you can easily trigger password change from within this flow. And now it's time for another poll. All right, thank you. This time I would like to know if you are willing or interested in allowing your users to manipulate their credentials from iOS settings to improve on their convenience and security, since they can detect which passwords have been compromised or are used or just are weak. As I can see, a lot of you is interested in implementing this approach, and also a good portion of you is already using or will be using Sign In with Apple in the future. That's good to hear. Now let's move to a concrete implementation of those approaches. First, let's talk about Sign In with Apple, how you can elevate user account from password-based authentication to Sign In with Apple, which is known by all or almost all iOS users. There are a few requirements that you have to follow in order to implement this functionality. First, Sign In with Apple is available for us since iOS 13. As I already mentioned, it is a requirement in some cases. Otherwise, your app won't pass App Store review. This functionality to elevate different credentials to Sign In with Apple is provided to us since iOS 14. So it's quite fresh, and I recommend that you use it. What you have to do is to add this AS account authentication modification support upgrade to Sign In with Apple to your info plist. So the iOS settings knows, or the iOS knows, that your app supports it and can try to elevate any user-based authentication flow tied to your app from within iOS settings. What you have to do is to implement two simple methods. One of them is convert account to Sign In with Apple without user interaction, and for automatically elevating it. And the other one is prepare interface to convert account to Sign In with Apple, and that's in case your authentication flow is not automatically passing without user interaction. For example, when you have implemented and user is using two-factor authentication or needs to do any other confirmations. To do this, there is a really simple implementation. I have implemented it and provided with the Authentication Manager that has really simple mock method authenticate with credentials that calls closure with one parameter, and that's whether or not the user was authenticated automatically. If the user was not authenticated, we are canceling the request and telling the extension that user interaction is required. But if the authentication is successful, we need to upgrade authorization to Sign In with Apple, and this will trigger a flow that lets user initiate the Sign In with Apple for our app. If we are getting any error with this authorization or user declined it, we need to cancel request to elevate this password-based authentication for our user. But if if that's successful, we have authorization. We are calling again our backend, our API, with this upgraded credentials, so it can be upgraded on our backend side. And when that is finished, we either get an error that something failed, or we inform iOS that everything was successful. And at this point, the initial credentials are deleted and replaced by sign in with Apple credentials for the user, for the service. Now, if automatic elevation fails, we have to implement prepare interface to convert account to sign in with Apple. It's a really similar approach to the previous one. We just have, the only difference is we have to present user with our full stake, whatever step is necessary to be authenticated. If user again are getting Apple sign in with Apple authorization, passing into our backend, our API, and completing the flow. And now let's talk about the option of OneTab password update for our users from within our app or iOS settings. This will basically change user's password, where they, after initiating this flow, don't have to do anything, and their new password is set for them based on your preferences on user strength. On password strength. This flow is again available to us since iOS 14, and you have an info list key called AS account authentication modification support strong password update key. You have to add it to your info list to make sure that iOS knows that you are supporting this flow. If you have any requirements for the password strength when it's generated, you can also set it up in info list under AS account authentication modification password generation requirements key. To do this password update, you just have to implement one method in your extension, and it's really simple and really similar to the sign in with Apple approach. Again, you have to check with your API or Authentication Manager if the user is authenticated with given credentials, and if user cannot be authenticated, we have to cancel request with the user interaction required error. But if user is authenticated, we generate new credentials and pass them to our API, so the password is changed. If that succeeds, we also have to inform extension context that everything succeeded and what is the new credential, new updated credential that we have sent to our backend. If the OneTab password update fails, user needs to do any authentication steps, any additional authentication steps. We have to implement different method, but luckily the password strength and availability of this flow keys are the same. We need to add them to info list, and also it's available since iOS 14. The method that is implemented looks really similar again. since there are no real differences. The only one is that we have to present authentication flow again, as was with sign-in with Apple, and the rest is basically the same as with as was with password change. And that would be everything from me, the whole presentation. So thank you for your patience, for your attendance.
Thank you, Filip. If you have any questions for this presentation, you can ask in the chat. I have collected one question so far, and the question is about the password leak. If it's possible to detect the password was leaked from the app itself, or you just have to go to the security recommendations screen, Filip?
That's a really good question, Honda. Thank you for that. Unfortunately, there is, as far as I know, there is no possibility to detect this from within the app. But as soon as iOS detect one password was leaked or in any of the leaks, you are immediately notified in iOS, and you can just tap on the notification and change your password.
Okay, thank you for the answer. If you guys have any more questions, you can also raise your hand and ask directly. If not, we can pass the mic to Gleb, and he's gonna tell us something about coordinators. Thank you, Filip.
Thank you.
Hey guys, so I guess I can start, right? Let me share my screen. Okay. You can probably see it now, right? Okay, so my name is Gleb and I do iOS, obviously, and I'm gonna tell you about my journey to coordinators and some useful insights that I got from it. So basically, my motivation behind this talk is a general, like, there are some challenges in our apps that we see on a daily basis, and it requires some software concept or solution. I think every one of you have met this pattern where you basically have a screen which is used in many places in the app. This can be anything. It can be calendar picker, or it can be some payment screen, or literally anything. And every time you instantiate it in your app, you're gonna write absolutely the same code of creating the view controller, maybe creating a view model or other components, creating dependencies. And basically this code is copied all over the place. And it gets even worse if you have multiple flows, or if you have the same flow which is used in many places, like onboarding or maybe some long form that the user needs to complete. And so the code that instantiates this whole thing and manages the kind of the result of it is everywhere across the app, and it gets hard to manage. So I decided that I should give coordinators a go some time ago. And this is an example, like what usually happens. Like this, it looks okay. But once you have all the dependencies, for example, some services, or it can grow really big. So this is what is used in many apps right now. Basically, there's a concrete instance of a coordinator which does everything, and you're able to, so the logic of handling navigation and transitions is hidden inside the show settings method, which is good. But the downside of this approach is that if you want to take this sign-in view controller and really put it somewhere else, it will be hard to do because you are stuck with this concrete instance of login coordinator, and you have to either somehow subclass it or like do some tricks in order to make it work in a different place. So you can do something like this, which is a step forward. But what I don't like about this approach is that you have access to all the methods which this protocol contains. So basically, from your sign-in view controller, you're able to, I don't know, maybe show onboarding, show sign-up screen, or do everything basically what a login coordinator can, but that not might be the business case for the sign-in screen. So its business case might be just to show settings and that's it. So I started to think about what can we do in order to kind of limit this functionality and make each screen sort of a black box that does something, and then coordinator reacts to it. So here's my idea. What if we're gonna inverse the relationship between the coordinator and a view controller? So a view controller will define what it will do, and coordinator will just handle it. So here's what I come up with. Basically, you have an event which is defined in each view controller. And like in this case, you have this login dismiss that's pretty much irrelevant. And you have a coordinator coordinator property, which is this sign-in view controller handling protocol. And all it does, it just handles events. So why is it good? Well, you don't know anything about your coordinator. You just know that you have, you can send events somewhere, and then it's up to coordinator to handle those events. And you can take this sign-in view controller and basically put it in some other place in the app. And all you have to do is to implement this method, and then all your transitions and events will be handled. As far as coordinator go, you can use something similar to this. There are actually multiple variations of this pattern, and right now I'm looking into it. I think the the set part is not necessary here, but whatever. Some of the implementations use start that returns a view controller. So basically you have your coordinator, which is instantiated, and then it's gonna, you call start, it will return some initial screen, and then you're gonna incorporate it into your hierarchy. That's also a valid approach. You can do that as well. So I have prepared a simple app, and I'm going to show you some basic transitions and how to create this hierarchy of multiple view controllers and coordinators. And this is how it looks like from like architecture standpoint. So each bubble that you see is a coordinator, and it might or might not handle view controllers. So basically you have your application coordinator, you have your main coordinator, and you have two tabs. You have chats, chat and orders, and settings is a model, and login is also a coordinator. So if I'm gonna do something like this, right, so I think you can still see me. Let's do, okay. So this is how the app looks like. So you have your login coordinator and a login view controller. You do login and there has some bug. And then you see a regular tab bar controller and you have two tabs, basically chat and orders. And in chat, you can show settings, which is a model. I did randomize the colors, so we might see some different colors here. And in orders, you can do a regular push. So you just pushing your new view controller onto the stack. And let's take a look at chat view controller first. So basically here, I hope the size is all right and you can see the code. And tell me if I need to make it bigger. Basically, this one just has a show settings event, which is right here, and it's triggered by a regular selector like the tab settings. And once we do that, it will call its coordinator, and it will forward this event to its coordinator. So if we're going to take a look at a chat coordinator, and I believe it's here. So what happens here is we're going to create another coordinator and start a new flow. Let's take a sneak peek at the coordinator protocol again. So besides this main protocol, I also have two more, which are kind of helpers, but you actually don't need them, but you need the functionality that they provide. So basically those two protocols are saying that for the view controller, you have to define a coordinator property. And in the same way for a coordinator, you need to define a parent property, which is a parent coordinator. So basically each coordinator might have a parent or not, and each view controller needs to have a coordinator. This can be improved because right now it basically says, hey, create a property, but whatever type it is. So I can do like coordinator string and the compiler will be happy and all good, but that's not what we want. But in order to improve it, you have to like inject some generic stuff into the view controller and or do some like type erasures, but we're not going to go into this. And now let's take a look at the login flow. So for the login screen, I'm gonna restart it. So for the login screen, you can see that it's all the same, like a simple button with the login event, and there is a handle for this login. And the coordinator which handles this is doesn't know what to do with this event, and it forwards this event to its parent. So as you can see here, it will call parent handle login, and the parent will do something with this. So the parent of login coordinator, if you remember the diagram, is an app coordinator. So we can go to app coordinator, which is right here. And app coordinator will do this. So basically, it will handle the login coordinator handling, and its event will be handled by showing a tab bar. So basically what happens here is there is a hierarchy switch in this coordinator. And for those of you who are curious, like how the app coordinator is instantiated, it's super simple. You just pass a window to it, and like in your scene delegate or app delegate. And so after the main tab bar is instantiated, you are actually creating a main tab bar coordinator, and it has two flows. So if we press login here, and it has two flows, chat and order, which each of them has their own coordinator. So there's an order coordinator and there is a chat coordinator as well. And so you basically don't care what they're doing because it can be mixed and matched in any way you want. So they will have, they will take care of what they're going to present or push next. It'll be their job, and I think that's good. And if you take a look at the diagram again, so you can see that from login view controller, the event is going up to its login coordinator, then it's going to the app coordinator. App coordinator knows that for this event, you need to make a switch. So it creates a new coordinator, a main coordinator, and then the other coordinators are taking care of their subsequent screens. What is cool about this, that I can take login coordinator and put it here. So I can make like a button, I don't know, somewhere here, and say that this main coordinator will conform to login coordinator event handling, and then I'm able to handle the whole login flow that we have. And that's the power of this approach, that you can mix and match both screens and coordinators. And I think this is great, but everything comes at a price. So there is some boilerplate code everywhere. So for example, each view controller, like a login view controller, needs to have its own protocol. A login coordinator needs to have its own protocol. And I mean, some people have an opinion that that's not ideal. And yes and no. So like you can do something to avoid this. Like for example, you can do an event handling protocol, and you can do, I don't know, maybe like event, and your method will be something like this. And then basically you will make every screen, every view controller, not view controller, every coordinator and every like parent coordinator to conform to this. But you will have to cast this event into something. So you will say like event as login view controller dot event, and then you're able to handle it and parse it further. You can go this way, but you will have to do the casting. With this way, it's like faster and like I would say more like prominent what you're doing. But this is also an option. And also a cool part about the events that you can actually pass data using it. So basically you can say, I don't know, maybe like username and I don't know, password or something similar to this. And basically once you send this event, it can be handled inside a coordinator to have this username and password, and it can be sent to a next coordinator or to a next screen if needed. So this is also pretty cool. And about the tricky part, so if we take a look at settings here, so for settings, we have a model, which is a iOS 13 model, and it has this kind of unfortunate thing that if you close it, it kind of won't call anything. It will just close. And the problem here is that if you go to chat coordinator, where is the chat coordinator? Here. So we are actually adding a settings coordinator to this array of children. And if we dismiss it like this, it will be hanging there as a memory leak. And so that's not good. We need to do something about this. And one way to handle it is to have it conform to this adaptive presentation controller delegate. and kind of send this event manually. So basically, once the model is dismissed, it will send a dismiss event, and this dismiss event will be handled in chat coordinator right here, and it will remove basically this settings coordinator from this array, and everything will be great again. What you can also do is, for this event, you can do something like coordinator, and basically you will send a coordinator here, and like you can send like self, and in chat coordinator here, instead of like removing all the settings coordinators in the array, you can do something like well, basically you will do like this, and then you need to take this. I always forgot this if case syntax, but you know what I mean. Like you will do this, and then you will remove just that instance of the coordinator. So that was one thing. And also, what is really cool, if we go to orders and we do show detail, we're gonna push not only a new view controller, but we also are pushing a new coordinator. Well, not pushing, but we're just adding it. And this is order coordinator, which is right here. And once we do show detail, so we will receive a detail event, and we're gonna append this order detail coordinator and show this detail. So this suffers, unfortunately, from the same problem that the model. Basically, if you do this swipe gesture, which never works on a simulator for some reason, but you know what I mean, like this left interactive gesture, or you press a back button, your order detail coordinator will be left hanging in this array. And what you can do, you can either handle it in a view controller that you are dismissing. So for example, in an order detail view controller, like here, when you're doing view will disappear, you can do is moving from parent, I believe. And then based on this condition, you can send an event to its coordinator to dismiss it. Or you can, for example, for the gesture, you can create a delegate to your navigation controller delegate, and basically check. So for each pop, it will call this method, and you can check which view controller was dismissed, and then you can manually call this dismiss event to delete the coordinator. And so this is it for the demo, I guess. Let me check. And we can go to some tips. Let's do a play again. So I've prepared 3 tips for you. What you can do once this whole like structure is in place. It allows you to extend on this functionality and not only handle transitions and navigation, but actually do some cool stuff. So first one is deep links. Basically, all you need to do is to add a handle deep link method to your coordinator. You can also like extract it to a separate protocol as well. And this deep link method will be like each coordinator will have this method, and it will be able to handle a certain deep link. So imagine this flow. You have your deep link coming to an app delegate, and then it comes to app coordinator, and then it comes to some other coordinator. And basically everywhere you're calling this handle deep link method, and you can recreate the hierarchy along the way, and each coordinator will be doing only its part. So like if it is a tab bar coordinator, it will create a tab bar along the way. If it is some flow, it will create this flow and then pass this deep link farther down the hierarchy. And basically, once you find the last screen that you want to actually show, you will have everything created for you. You'll still have to write this code of like instantiating view controllers and stuff, but at least it will be not handled in the app delegate with like, you know, view controllers dot first dot is it a tab bar controller and so on, but it will be everyone will take care of their own part. Another cool tip that you can do with this is A/B testing. So basically, let me go back. So basically for this one, we were displaying an order detail, and you can see that we have a detail B and detail A. Sometimes it's randomized, so it's hard to get. And what happens here is in order detail coordinator, which is right here, we have custom view controllers, which are like our logic can be anything. So basically, we can have some condition based on which we will display this screen. So maybe it's a custom onboarding screen, or it's a payment screen, and it has like you want to test it for like new users. So based on this condition, you will just switch the screen and display a new screen. And what is really cool is you can do the same with the flows. So all you need to do is instantiate another coordinator, like a new coordinator flow, and then just show it. And that's it. So you can do one condition in order to do this whole A and B testing. And the last but not least, for all the reactive lovers, you can change the coordinator property on the view controller to an event publisher in Combine, or if you are using RX Swift, you can do observable as well. And basically, what it does is that it will allow you to send events to your publisher, and the coordinator will react to them, and it can also combine them with other combine flows or RX operators. And yeah, so this is also a valid approach. One small note, so I have two things here. I have an event publisher, I have an event and a publisher. So this is done in order to make it read only. So basically, so that we can't send events from the outside to the view controller, but only to be able to subscribe to them in the coordinator. And a big benefit of this is also if you are instantiating your view controller, let's say here, and you will do something like, I don't know, order detail view controller, blah, 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 and there will be like events.sync, and you can do something like there will be like an event, and you can handle it here. But what's cool is that you still have reference to your view controller that you are creating, and you can do something with it as well. Whereas like with the regular delegate approach, you kind of lose this reference to this view controller, and you have to search it in navigation controller or something like this. And let's go back here. And I would say that this will be it from me. So I have a GitHub with this app, which you can take a look at. I think you're going to receive this link in the email, and feel free to explore it. And yeah, so thank you so much. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Gleb, for sharing this cool approach to coordinators. And Guys, if you have any questions about coordinators or security that Filip presented, feel free to raise your hand or send your question to the chat. I don't see any questions there, so I'll hand it over to Kate again.
Oh, okay. So if there are no questions at all, and I don't see any questions at YouTube stream, so I think that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, we actually have one question.
Okay.
Do you have any practical example using coordinators and combine?
Let me think about it. So I don't have something concrete, but basically, like if you are going like full way React, you can combine this with, so those events, you can combine them with requests, or you can combine them with other navigation events. I think Filip has some practical example. Filip?
So I have one approach, and that was with picking documents and images from camera, where you needed to pick the document or image and send it back to the view controller so it can react or do anything, any processing or anything that it wanted. So basically, we were passing subject to another view controller, and once we were done with the picking, the document or image was sent back.
Yeah, I think I know one more example. So if you have some service, which is, let's say it monitors like a user logged in state, and basically you can pass this publisher around your app, and everyone who wants to know like what's going on with the user, like is it logged in, like what is the latest like user info, you can pass this pass this publisher between coordinators, and then subscribe to it in different places and handle the changes for this publisher. So does it answer the question?
Thank you for the question. That was a good one. Do you guys have any more questions? So the next question is from Matusz. Why don't you use presented controller on top of controller in a navigation controller stack instead of custom coordinators child array?
So you can have multiple flows, and like you don't know what the next flow will be. So if it is another model, or if it is I don't know, maybe some regular navigation flow, and basically this allows you to have a flexibility of like mixing and matching whatever you want. So and like there is a rule that you have a coordinator per some flow. It may have like one view controller, two more, but basically once it becomes too complex, it's better to separate it in several coordinators and like chain them together. Yeah, whereas like this approach would work, but for a limited amount of view controllers.
Matusz, thank you for the question. Was it answered the way you expected, or do you have some follow-up question? We have actually one attendee who's raising his hand, and that's Matusz. Hello, Matusz.
Hi. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Just a follow-up. You're saying you can change. You don't have a flexibility to change flow. However, why would you change a flow from a model controller? I mean, yeah, you can create your own navigation controller inside and create some, I don't know, navigation hierarchy to log in or something very specific, but you won't present anything on top of this model. I don't see the benefit using this approach instead of mine, to be honest.
Well, I guess like the main I would say the main point is that like once your logic is abstracted, so once your navigation logic is abstracted to some higher entity, it will greatly improve the the ability to reuse components, to reuse flows. And like this is the main point. So like I'm not saying that this is like some ultimate solution or something, but what I'm saying is that once you have a dedicated component that manages navigation, it becomes super simple because you have another layer in your app. And if there is an issue with like a wrong screen was displayed in the flow, like instead of going through the view controllers trying to search like what happened, what was the condition, right away that hey, I need to go to my custom controller, or I need to go to my coordinator, and you can pinpoint the issue much faster. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. That's like the main idea.
I understand. However, you can think about using your coordinators like some kind of strongly type with much less boilerplate code in it without this approach. You may perhaps specify some custom actions which you could reuse in a whole app, like I don't know, pop and push or some controller, or I don't know, close multiple controllers and present another on top of it. Like I don't know, I present some tutorial for I don't know card or something similar, and you can close multiple of them and use some kind of typical action which you could use from some app coordinator, some higher entity. Is it possible with your approach?
So can you explain it to me again? So you have like a custom. So okay, so you have like I can share the whatever. So basically, you have a view controller, and then what? So this is like a screen, but it has. So who handles this one screen?
The coordinator for the screen, specific for this controller, for example.
Okay, so you have like let's imagine you have a login view controller, and you have a login coordinator, which is a concrete type for this login view controller.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And you may have some other controller on below it in the stack, which might be, for example, marked with some kind of action, and you can pass some app coordinator which handles the whole stack to each of the coordinators. Coordinators in the stack don't know about each other. They know just about the app coordinator, and they can call some typical actions like present and dismiss, which has some type of action. You can customize the transitions because you will pass the controller to add to stack or just to present modally, for example. It's another approach.
So basically, I can try to show it. So you have a view controller, you have a coordinator, one coordinator, a concrete type which handles this view controller, and you can have several of those, and then you have a big, some higher level coordinator which handles the whole flow, but it communicates only to these coordinators and not the controllers.
Yeah. And you will specify your flow for your coordinator, specific, for example, login, right? And you won't change just to explain it otherwise. You will have,
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. You specified the transitions in the in this big coordinator, and then basically you can say push this, pop, present this, a model, pop, push this, and then basically you have this flow, how it should look like.
Yeah.
And you can customize it.
Yeah.
So it's also a valid approach, but see, you have even more complexity here. So basically, instead of one layer, you now have two layers which are handling the whole flow. And it's so basically what you did here, for the big coordinator, it also has this sort of generic interface to its small coordinators, and basically this creates this abstraction of this interface basically for the small screens. So this is also a valid approach, and I'm not against it. I think it's good.
Okay.
But maybe it's an overkill to have a coordinator for one screen, but maybe not. It's also possible.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
In my first slide or second slide, I was talking about having this huge coordinator which is managing every one of the screens, and there is
it's not managing every one of them, and they're just storing them in a navigation controller and handling present and dismiss actions with specific types, not actions like, I don't know, specific flow. Flow itself is handled in separate coordinators.
Yeah, I understand it, but I was against the fact that you have a coordinator which can show or presents a lot of stuff, and one view controller knows everything. So basically you can call a wrong method even if you don't want to. You can call a wrong method and show some other screen which is completely unrelated to your business flow of the app. And yeah, this is what I was kind of against.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. Thank you,
Matusz, for sharing your approach and for the question. We have one more question from the audience, and then we have one question from YouTube. So, Mr. Kaltown would like to take a word.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello, yep.
I just want to say that this approach that Gleb invented worked really well for me in a case that is maybe a little bit uncommon. But when I was porting recently an application to macOS using MacCatalyst, this was a lifesaver, especially with the events, because if you're porting an app to Mac, the navigation paradigm completely changes. You're no longer pushing things, or at least you shouldn't be. And you're no longer presenting things. You're in just a different paradigm completely. And having these events typed and being able to handle them in the coordinator that is specific to that particular platform implementation was a lifesaver. So I think that specifically kind of abstracting away the logic or the way the screens are presented helps a lot in this particular scenario, because the pushes and presents, they're just not there on macOS, for example, at least in the case of the UI split view controller. So if you're thinking about different platforms, this may be a good option for you for sure. That's it, just a comment.
Thank you for that. That's definitely a nice comment. We have one more question from YouTube. And the question is, have you used coordinators only in MVC architecture?
So like usually what I worked for is MVVM. So it was like MVVM-C. But like basically, even if you take different architecture, I don't know, like Viper, let's say, like a coordinator is basically a router. So it will basically an entity which handles navigations and transitions, and this logic is abstracted somewhere, and it's not like it's not tied to the actual view implementation.
Yep, I believe.
And also, I have one more comment to this. So with some of the architectures, it's tricky. So a good example is SwiftUI. So basically, in order to so a coordinator is not a great pattern for SwiftUI, because like everything just like presents itself, but it's also a problem the way how like the navigation link is implemented and how you do transitions between screens. But it's very hard to create an entity that abstracts this flow of like managing the transitions. So there you can use something like a router-ish, so kind of like post your event or post your destination, and then someone will handle the next the next transition or the next the next screen, what's going to happen.
Thank you for the answer. I believe this answers it nicely. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Well, thank you guys. All your questions were great. And thank you, Filip and Gleb, for your presentations.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thanks for coming, guys. Do we have some more words to say?
Well, we'll definitely see you on our next iOS online talks, and hopefully soon on some events in person, hopefully next year.
Yes. I just want to thank everyone again, and thank you to our speakers and to Honza for a great event. Yeah, as you said, we are hoping to see you at any of our future events. The next week we are hosting front-end workshop, which is focused on image optimization. And the week after, that means on 3rd of December, we have iOS talk where we will be diving into in-app subscriptions with Tina Stremenova. So if you are interested in any of these, just look at our Eventbrite site or our website event section, and you can find everything there. And as we want to be proud of everything we do, we just want to ask you for filling out really short form and let us know about your feedback. You should be able to see it once you close your Zoom, but I will post it into the chat right now so you can reach the form from there. So thank you very much in advance, and I hope to see you really soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Right. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Have a great evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.